I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a seven-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Thanks for joining the Growth and Grit podcast. My name is Julia Davis. Today, we're going to be talking about a conversation in our conversation series. And as I go over these, if you think this could help someone, please forward it to them or share it, with whoever you think it could help. This one specifically is more for the direct sales industry or a high volume recruiting scenario. So if that's not your business, you can skip this one and move on. But if you are in a high volume recruiting, which means you want to bring on board as many people as possible, which could be a commission only business, or a low base hourly business or something like that, where the volume of people helps your sales metrics. I'm talking specifically about that. So the conversation that I'm talking about today is when the leadership people in the industry that you're in, if say you have a lot of employees and they're all in charge of interviewing and bringing people on board, and they're getting really, really picky with who they think they should bring on board. And in most scenarios, in most businesses, this would make sense because you're paying people a lot of money and you want to be incredibly picky and selective on who you bring on board. When you're in a high volume recruiting or commission only business, a lot of times we do not know who's going to be good until their first, second, third, fourth week. And I've been historically wrong about people in this industry where I've thought, hey, I don't know if this person's going to be good or not. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they're amazing. Or they're trained by somebody different and they become unbelievable. So it's really hard to tell in a commission or high volume sales business who's going to be good from like a 30-minute interview. Unless you're incredibly experienced, then you probably do know. So I'm going to use the conversation tool that I talked about a few episodes ago that I developed based on the direct sales business and how to have specific conversations. It can work for any industry where you manage people. And I know that ChatGPT does something similar to this where you can type in anything. However, in a ChatGPT thing, it gives you just a generic response and you have to be incredibly specific. So when I programmed this, I was incredibly specific with the programming to help it develop into a tool that we can use in the industry of leading and developing people, where you have a high volume of employees or any volume of employees. And then your goal is to get them to move ahead and to have more responsibility. So I'm going to do a screen share and show you guys how this works. So the topic today is picky leadership, and I'm going to type in exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the Convo Coach that I developed. It guides direct sales leaders through growth-focused conversations. And that gives you some prompts here on what you can use, but I'm going to ask it something else. I'm going to say, how do I talk to my leadership team about being too picky when it comes to hiring new people? After I type this in, it's going to ask me a few questions. I've programmed it to do this just so it can give you like a more detailed conversation, but it's also going to give you a sample of what it would say. So for example, it's going to say, before I craft the conversation, who are you talking to? An owner, an assistant manager, a recruiting manager? Why do you believe they're being too picky? Are they only hiring people with perfect resumes? It's incredibly specific. I programmed it that way to make sure that it gives you a good answer and it like prompts you to be specific where a normal ChatGPT would not do this. So who am I talking to? I'm talking to employees, leaders. They're turning people down too quickly. Is this an issue, something that has been happening for a while? It's a new issue. Not happening long term. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is this hitting the bottleneck affecting your business? 10 in terms of bottleneck. So I'm going to answer those questions and it's going to give me the conversation. So it's going to say, okay, here's the conversation you should have. It says, guys, I want to talk to you about something I've noticed recently. I think we're starting to make decisions on people too fast. And this is how I would normally talk. So you might have to adjust it to your voice tone or what you're doing, but it's saying, like, I'm not suggesting that we lower our standards because standards are important. What I'm concerned about is that we're not giving people enough of a chance to show up to show us who they are before we're deciding they aren't a fit, which is exactly what I said at the beginning of this podcast. So you can see how this is inside of my brain, which is kind of freaking me out. Okay. So in our industry, people don't get paid for who they are day one. They get paid for who they're willing to become. So most of us weren't a perfect candidate when we started, which is so true. In most industries, we are not perfect. We had flaws, weaknesses, things we needed to learn. And right now it feels like we're looking for reasons people won't make it instead of reasons they might. We want to ask ourselves, did we really evaluate their work ethic? And this is how you give them a tool to use. So now it's saying, hey, give them these questions to ask. Like, did we evaluate their work ethic? You can run a whole workshop on this. Did we test their coachability? Did we give them enough pressure, exposure to the opportunity, or did we make a decision based on a first impression? So our goal isn't to convince everybody. Our goal is to find people with potential and give them a chance to prove themselves. So going forward, I want us to be tough on standards, but patient with potential. So let's make sure we're not accidentally talking ourselves out of future leaders before they've had an opportunity to develop. That's an incredible conversation, right? That you're going to have with your leadership team. And then it gives you a challenge question after that. How many of our current leaders would have been cut off if we judged them after their first week? And you can do the stat so they can really open their eyes and give them an example of like how we all kind of struggled in our first week. And some of us did and some of us didn't. And they can kind of joke about it and laugh and have a conversation, but it will really create like an immediate perspective. And in a direct sales business, the people who become owners are often not the people who look the best at the beginning. They're people who are consistently showing up, staying coachable, working through adversity. So keep reinforcing high standards effort. And then it asks you if you want an additional tool, which is, do you want to, and leaders evaluating, do you want your leaders evaluating potential and behavior? You want your leaders evaluating potential and behavior, not just whether someone fits the picture of owner day one. So you could also ask it for a tool, but you can copy this conversation and you could send it to other people within your group or within your team leads if this is happening to you. So this is the way that this is curated to be able to help you with conversations like that. So this is specifically if the team that you have is being too picky with who they bring on board, which is very, very typical in an industry that is a high volume recruiting industry. So I wanted to give you guys an example of how that works with that specific conversation. I'll plug in another one next week so you can see how it works with something else. If you do want access to the link I was talking about, the ChatGPT Convo Coach link, I'm going to put it in the description. So there will be a link in the description that you can click on that will take you directly to the prompts page. And then as soon as you do that, you can grab the Convo Coach. Thanks for being on.
Every week on the Growth and Grit podcast, we bring you real stories and practical tools to help you thrive through challenges. If this resonates with you, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share this podcast with someone who could use it too. It only takes a second, but it would mean the world to us, and it keeps you plugged in to fresh inspiration.